Our first speaker is going to be Ms. TERESA CARLSON, who serves as the Vice President of the Worldwide Public Sector at Amazon Web Services. And if you don't know what that is, I'm sure you're going to figure that out here, but you probably use their services as the government uses their services. And it really is changing the dynamic of how and who does security for whom. Ms. Carlson served as the head of global public sector business at Amazon. Also, she leads the Web Services Global Sector business, and she joined in 2010. She was previously with Microsoft. But again, those of you who were here yesterday, you know that's not the whole story. Here's the rest of the story. So, as I'm speaking up here, sometimes you speak too fast. And little did I know that Ms. Carlson, this speech pathologist, so she's critiquing me to make sure I'm enunciating correctly. She's also from Kentucky. And we were having a drink last night, and we were getting schooled on what bourbon really is. So she's an aficionado of bourbon, but it doesn't end there. Are there any McCoys in this room? She is part of the original clan of the Hatfields. So with that, Ms. Carlson.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good morning. So I do love bourbon. I don't get to drink it as often as I would like. And I am from Kentucky, and my maiden name is Hatfield. So a good time to be talking about cyber, right? So some of the original feuds that went on. I'm very excited to be here today to talk about sort of what's happening at Amazon and AWS and our ecosystem with cyber. And I think these kind of forums coming together are really important, because if we don't have the discussion and dialogue and don't have these sort of thinking kind of forums, it's hard for us to come together. And really, cyber is one of these topics that we have to come together on. Let me ask you a question. How many people know who Amazon is? Okay, great. But how many people know who AWS is? Okay, a much more educated audience about AWS. So that's good, but there's a few of you who don't. Let me just share. So AWS is a component of Amazon, just so you understand, like, what the heck are you doing here and why are you up here talking about cyber and technology? So AWS is one of the components of Amazon. We're actually the fastest growing IT company to ever hit a run rate of $10 billion in less than 10 years. We sort of started as a skunks work out of one of the Amazon properties, which is sort of cool. We've been around almost 10 years now, believe it or not. We just celebrated our 10th year and are the largest cloud provider in the world. And I like to say we also have the most penetration within the government sectors around the world, and we're the first to hit in a lot of the security and compliance regimes and actually help set a lot of those. So with that, let me dive in and talk about some of the key themes that I wanted to cover today. And as we know, the threats to cybersecurity is ever present in both the public and private sector. And governments all over the world are looking to shape policies and programs that really look at, not just look, but act on cyber threats. And one of the things that we see that are really important is the shaping of policy and programs around that discussion. There's three things the U.S. government has done, and we see that around the world there's also acts and policies shaping up that are supporting cyber. And one is the cloud first policy that the U.S. government put forth, almost probably, I think it's almost been 8 years ago now. So that was important, and we've seen cloud first policies now pop up around the world and with individual groups. I just met with the Chief of Navy who said, they have a cloud first policy as an example, and they're moving forward really fast on that. The second one that's been important in the U.S. government is FITARA, which is the Federal Information Technology Acquisition Reform Act. And that's really a program that was put in place to ensure that CIOs have procurement authority over resources to modernize their IT systems. The third one that has just happened not too long ago is the Modernizing Government Technology Act. And that's intended to provide the necessary funding to make that happen. So you see a lot of times, of course, anybody who's in government know a lot of times you'll get an act or a mandate and you're like, that's unfunded. So these three are important because, again, Cloud First, then FITARA to give authorities, but then three to give funding and budget to actually make that happen. These are critical and essential tools in order to modernize cyber, because what we will see around the world is that many times agencies and organizations will do nothing because they think that's the safest thing to do, and we know it's not. And in fact, for the first time, we started the public sector business with AWS. I was hired to do this job 6 years ago. We literally had no public sector business. And we would walk in to agencies to talk about security or talk about cloud, and we couldn't move 2 seconds because they're like, you're not secure. So we had to spend the first few months just talking about how we were secure and why we were secure. Fast forward today, and I see governments and large enterprises moving to the cloud because of security. And part of that reason is they tell us no longer can they control and manage that infrastructure and the tools as safely as we can. And I'll go into some details about why individuals are thinking about that. But again, the old principles of do nothing, hunker down and I'm safe, that doesn't work anymore. You have to know what's going on in your environment. And you also have to be able to innovate to be able to do that. And a lot of agencies and groups, large enterprises, feel they can do that now much more effectively with situational awareness through a cloud-based model. So it's been sort of fun for people to say, I'm going to the cloud now for security. They're not thinking about that they won't go to the cloud. We have the kind of enterprises that have moved to the cloud are quite interesting too. And I get asked this a lot around the world. Financial services has been a group that's thinking about cyber and moving to the cloud. Groups like FINRA, large banks like Capital One. FINRA, who regulates one of the regulators of the financial industry here in the U.S., have moved all their data centers now to the cloud. They do all their massive analytics. And they do that because if you know anything about FINRA, what they do is they look for the bad guys in financial services. They're trying to find areas within finance where there's fraud, abuse, or trends that could happen where the market would dip, and why is that happening? Well, they tell me 3 things, the reason that they need to modernize their technology for that. One is regulations are changing so rapidly that they can't keep up with the regulatory environment anymore without making these rapid changes. Secondly, the data they're amassing and the amount of transactions, they can't host and manage that anymore in their own data centers. And third, they say we can't be secure or competitive anymore in the environment that we're running. So these are the kinds of things that we hear in terms of why individuals are going into that. Also, the U.S. intelligence community made a decision to move to the cloud a few years ago. And we built the IC's cloud region. And that is a region just like any we run around the world. When I say region, we talk about Amazon Web Services regions, which are large footprints of data centers that we build around the world. We have 14 regions that we have around the world today, and we'll launch 2 more this year, one in Canada and one in the UK. And you'll continue to see us roll out regions around the world. And the reason we do that is because, one, a lot of countries still believe data sovereignty is what they need, and we want them to have that experience if they want it and they need it. But also we find many customers want to do that same kind of footprint business around the world. So as we launch these regions, the intelligence community region said, we need our own because we need it to be in a classified environment. And we went up and down the stack with them. We've done many reviews of security, and they made a decision that they can move to the cloud because they feel it's more secure. In fact, Gus Hunt, who was the CTO of the CIA previously, he's now at Accenture, said at one point, the larger the polymorphic surface, the harder the attack vector is. And I think that's one of the things they still believe and see, is that if you can move around, you're going to be harder to find. You're going to be harder to get. And if you can encrypt and move, then that's even better. So, in fact, we had Sean Roche, who's the Deputy Digital Director for the CIA. I had him out speaking to my team a few weeks ago. And he said in his presentation, why are you utilizing cloud? What are the benefits, he said, that we've gotten? And he talked about it in the 4 C's. He said the agency has been able to benefit in these: configuration, connectivity, compliance, and collection. And on the configuration, he said, we always know what we're running. On connectivity, you can look and see that you're connected and every device that's connected, because you have distributed situational awareness of what's taking place. 3, you have compliance. You know that your policies are applied in the environments that you have running. And 4, collections. You can monitor and manage every single user and what they're doing in that environment. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Then I like to add 2 more. I talk about, now I say, okay, Sean, you have the 4 A's and I'm going to give you 2 additional. You have the 4 C's and I'm going to give you 2 additional A's, which are then analyze and act. So after you do those 4 C's, or in conjunction with those, you have the ability to massively analyze through machine learning and AI, and then you can act. You can react and act very fast. And when you're in an environment of threat or possible threat, you continually need to be able to know how to get to your field leaders. Your analysts needs to get that information out very rapidly on what you're going to act on. So these are the kind of things that we actually hear from our customers, and why they believe cloud has been a game changer for them. In fact, at one point, I've heard some of the users say, I did this massive data pump of analytics for less than I spend on a Starbucks cup of coffee. And that's the other thing, the ability to try things and fail fast and experiment and recover. Because in today's environment with cyber threat, we do not have time to fail and not understand why we failed. If you're failing, you've got to know that you're falling and recover. You've got to be able to experiment and understand that experimentation. And that is what a cloud environment allows you to do. And that's the reason IT is a differentiator today when it comes to cyber threat. One of the things that we hear often is that our customers want to understand how Amazon does what they do in terms of defending our own environment, and how do we do it. So one of the assets that we've been bringing out more is managed service offerings, or offerings that behave and look at like what we're doing. So one of the things, we're going to announce a lot more. We have a big conference every year at the end of the year called reInvent, and that's where we make our major announcements. We're going to be making more of those this year on our security tools. But one of the things, our CISO's name is Steve Schmidt. And I met some gentleman last night. He was former FBI for many years. And I was like, do you know Steve? They're like, oh, we've known Steve forever. So it was fun to connect the dots in this community. But the great thing about having a CISO that was in the justice and public safety world is he understands the environment. And from the early days, we started building services that we knew were of national need. As a result, we now have many, many individuals on our security and compliance team that came from both the justice and public safety world and the intelligence community. And it helps if you have individuals who understand that world, and you build the tools and you innovate on behalf of them on things that they knew that they needed at the time. One of the examples that we have is we built our encryption and key management service so that you hold those keys. When you're encrypting your data, we never have those keys. You hold those keys, you distribute those keys. The other tools are things like Kinesis, where you have real-time data ingestion of all the information, and you in real time can analyze that. And what Steve would tell you about our environment, and I always tell our employees, know you're being watched, because every day he gets a data dump of everything happening in our environment and looks for trends, because you sort of begin to understand behaviors of your environment, and you know what a salesperson's doing, you know what a technical person or marketing person's doing. And if you see behaviors that are different than those behaviors that you know that you have a trend, they will actually call those out and say, why were you in this system for this period of time? And they'll begin to go deeper. So those kind of tools now we'll make those highly available to our customers. How do we do that? How do we analyze that? We have a tool we launched last year called Inspector that's being used a lot in terms of before you roll out a new application you build, you can test that environment for holes or gaps from a security perspective. Is it built with compliance and reliability on the architecture and design that you need? So those are the kind of tools that just allow you to rapidly think about your environment. But when you think about cyber and all the streams of information that you need to look at, making sure that every device that is connected, that's locked down, where is it? What's the situational awareness of the environment that you're working in? You need to be able to click a button, get those analytics, and know what's happening in your environment. And that's the way we operate. And you also need to know the internal threat that's the possibility. We know there are internal threats. And you need to know the external threat. And in order to know the external threat as well, there's a service that we have called Trusted Advisor. I love this service. It does two things. One, it saves customers a lot of money, which we love at Amazon to save our customers money. But it shows you instance types you're running on compute, things that you're doing where you're keeping things running that you shouldn't. But it also will tell you have ports open. So our tech team will send you alerts and say, did you know you have these ports open? Do you realize that this is open to the internet? So it gives you ideas on what you're running. Another tool that I'll just share, and these are just examples of how cloud allows you to keep your environment safe and how we build by design these services. But one is called Config and Configure Rules. And you can configure your environment, and you lock that environment down the way you want it locked. And then after you've locked it down, it allows you to specifically get alerts if those configurations change. That's real. I have people say, no, you can't do that. I'm like, yes, you can do that. So you lock your system down, you set your configuration, and then you have it set up where those alerts come to you if anyone tries to change it. So you can do that through your CIO, whoever is managing or monitoring that system. So these are the kind of tools. And why are those important? They're important because from a security threat, you've got to know what is going on. What do they say? The first rule of security is know what you're securing. If you don't know what you're securing, it's going to be hard to secure that environment. And we know in the government space, it's been one of the hardest things to do. In fact, when I was at Microsoft, I used to laugh a little bit because systems management, who knows what systems management server is? It's a mess. I never saw anybody be able to deploy it properly because they didn't manage their whole environment. They were like, they kept moving around and they're like, we just can't, it doesn't work right. That's what changes in the cloud. It allows you to manage and monitor. So let me just recap real quickly. So I've shared with you who we are. I've shared with you how AWS builds our systems by design with security. Day one, it's what we think about every day. Because I know probably individuals don't think of us as security, but basically Amazon and AWS specifically we're like an engineering company. We design things, we create things. In that creation, that innovation is what you see from us every day, which has resulted. This year we'll have over 1,000 new services and features that will roll out. And many of those have either a security stint or are a security component of a feature. So we think about this stuff all the time. So when we design our regions, we design everything we do with security in mind. And a lot of that are things we built. We don't use commoditized tools. We have built this with all of these in mind. Amazon.com is one of our largest customers. They're actually a customer of ours. We run all their infrastructure, and now most of their applications are run. They continue also to move and migrate everything to the cloud. The second layer of that is the security and compliance component. So we say we're secure, so does anybody else think we're secure? Well, we allow that to be done through regimes like FedRAMP, ISO, PCI. I can name 1,000. Every country in the world has their own security and compliance regime, but we have a who's NASA slide of every compliance. We've met HIPAA. Think of one, and we've met CGIS, and we've met CGIS at the highest level. Now we're going state by state and getting CGIS. So if a customer says they have a security and compliance regime we need to meet, we go meet it with them. So we have auditors in our data centers all the time. But what we've come to understand is that we've also had to work with auditors and programs to understand how security is different in the cloud and how it actually enhances, because a lot of controls were outdated. So I would encourage you all to really understand how your security controls need to be set up in a cloud-based environment. It's quite different, but it's much better and it's much easier. In fact, one of the things I've really loved about our work with the intelligence community is we've been able to now say, does this make sense to do it this way because we've always done it that way, or should we be looking at new ways, more automated ways to manage and monitor our security as a result of what cloud offers? So then, now let's talk about how individuals are doing this in the cloud. So what are ways that actually individuals are doing this? One of the things, I've always believed that cities are going to be one of the next big hubs of innovation. Number one, they've got to innovate. They've got to protect their citizens, and they have a big threat now, more and more. We see what's happened every day. Orlando, New York, New Jersey. You look at Paris, you look at cities that are happening, Cannes. I mean, many places now, cities are the place that they've got to think about how they secure, lock down, and manage. So I ran this city on a cloud contest. This was my 4th year. I have my own conference here in D.C., and we announced winners. This year we had amazing groups come forward. And one that we had, or one last year, was City on a Cloud Challenge with City of Los Angeles. And they have, they're one of the largest targets of cyber threat in the nation. They have 35,000 employees distributed along 37 departments. And on an average day, they record more than 130 million security messages from more than 120,000 connected devices and growing. And what they've told us is, of course, a lot of those security alerts that they get in and their login, they're mundane. They just come in, they have to separate them all, but they have to ingest all of them. And they said we needed a way to separate the mundane from the things that were really critical. And they put a team together to coordinate a program to start taking in machine learning to separate the mundane from the things that were really a high threat. And they've started using cloud storage and compute along with machine learning to look at the events. And as a result, they put together 5 cybersecurity teams now that support the entire city. And they look at they've broken down the elements of all these devices, and they look at this in real time. And they've told us that it's resulted in 50% or more savings of time and the ability to look at and react to those threats that are real. Because the mundane, you get a lot of mundane, and you got to figure out what's real and what's not real. The other one that I wanted to share is one that the Department of Defense uses, because protecting, of course, the U.S. cyber assets has become a top-level priority with our government and our Department of Defense, as well, of course, as our private sector who work in partnership to do this. And we have a partner ecosystem that takes everything AWS has to offer and builds some of their own tools to support the customer. So we love that. We want our customers, we want our partners to take advantage of everything that we offer in a building block format and utilize that so that they are more well protected. And DoD has been, of course, fighting adversaries, still are on a daily basis, through cyber. And one of our partners called Enlighten IT Consulting utilized the big data platform for one of their customers. And what they've been able to do is to use a robust architecture and scalable architecture that ingests, stores, and does visualization of multiple petabytes of cyber data daily. So they're taking in millions of records per second. And they've developed this cyber suite, so when they ingest all this data, they have a portal that you can go to, a dashboard, that you can look at all the cyber data that's been ingested, and then they have it in categories by criticality. So it's those types of things that our partners are doing to actually enhance cyber activities and threats that we see for the good and the benefit of our customers, utilizing a platform that's very, very scalable. So I've sort of given you now, I have thousands of examples, and if you want more, you can go up to our site and look, and we'd be happy to share, because we have really, our customers and partners are the ones that innovate on top of what we're doing. They're amazing at now taking in these services and really utilizing them from a massive data analytic and machine learning to fight cyber threats. Then I want to just talk about tools and resources, because I know we have West Point grads and hopefully Westbrook. We have any cadets in the room? A few? All right. I love it. We have cadets in the room. That's awesome. So we know, then you guys are, it's all guys. We have a gal there too, I think. Good. The guys and gals, y'all are cyber. You're interested in cyber? We need that. That's awesome. Well, we have some programs that we like to roll out, because we think some of the most important individuals are our students, the ones that are learning. We need to make sure that they have the best tools available at their fingertips so we can educate them on the modernized approach to utilizing IT to fight cyber. So some of the things we do, we've rolled out an AWS Educate program where we provide millions and millions of dollars of assets to our universities and community colleges and skilled programs to support the use of cloud, so they can understand how they use it free, so they can have that experimentation and they can look at how they utilize cloud. The professors can take that in and use that in their classroom. And we just announced, which I'm really excited about, badging. So now we have a career path. So they can go in and get badged, and cyber is going to be one of our badges that they can take advantage of. So they'll get badged, and they can use that as a credentialing method as they go through the career pathway of up to a certified solution architect to go get what we hope is a highly paid job in cloud, including cyber. So we have tools and resources, tons online. We also have a Cloud Essentials for security program that anyone can take online, and we continue to roll out more and more tools. And we think, again, expanding on STEM and technology for education is going to be critical. We have got to train our students on how they take advantage and utilize the tools for cyber. And then just on my closing thoughts before I wrap, number one, again, thank you all so much. I'm really honored to be here today. Like I said, this is a really important conference. I'm going to help support it next year. We'll fill this room 3 times, I'm sure, because it's just getting started here in the U.S. But I want to leave you with 3 things in mind around the world, within the U.S. and around the world, that we can improve. One is policy. We've got to drive the right policies around the world, both in the private and government sector, that really help collaboratively think through the right policies for cyber. Number 2, security. Let's partner to ensure that we have all the leading compliance standards and don't repeat things. Let's not continue to add things that aren't important just for the bureaucracy of adding. Let's make sure that we have the right protocols and standards in place that we can all march to, that make sense. And then finally, education. Let's work together to make sure across all programs that we have the right kind of technology that our students can take advantage of, from elementary to high school through college and being reskilled, and that they understand how they utilize technology to check cyber on a daily basis. And with that, I thank you all so much for your time and having me here this morning, and good luck with the rest of the conference. Thank you.